We have a biologist, our deer biologist from Rapid City, Kevin Roebling here. Kevin has a PowerPoint presentation to tell you a little bit about that research that we have going on across the state here.
Great.
Kevin, thanks.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I appreciate the invitation here. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about the statewide mule deer and white-tailed deer fawn survival research project that we're conducting throughout the state. It's a very exciting project that we'll cover here. So, reasons for the project. Annual rates of change within a deer population are influenced primarily by the number of fawns that reach 1 year of age, and this is considered the recruitment rate. Annual doe survival is another very important metric that goes into these models that really will dictate if a population increases, decreases, or remains the same. Annual and overwinter fawn survival provides really critical information to the modeling process, and this will directly influence deer license numbers and harvest strategies in the future. WMI review did recommend population modeling should continue to be improved, and this is an effort to do so. And these models should form the basis of population projections that should be compared with population objectives. And to do this, this does require accurate and up-to-date data. The model is as good as the data you stick into it, and thus the effort to go out and get really good, accurate, up-to-date fawn survival data. WMI also recommended harvest management and license tag allocation should be based on algorithms that allow adaptive management and provide a learning experience for managers. One really critical step for adaptive management is rigorous monitoring and assessment of the target population, and that is exactly what we're doing here with this study. We do some current monitoring through the Fall Herd Classification Survey, which quantifies 5-month recruitment and sex ratios. But the big question is, how many fawns actually are recruited into the population? A 5-month age ratio doesn't actually quantify the number of fawns that reach their first birthday, and that's really what we're after. How many reach their first birthday? And this time period between November 1st through May 31st is that critical time period of overwinter mortality rates. And what are they? Well, we feel that they probably are going to be different here when we do have severe winters, like we did in 2009, 10, and 11. This chart here is showing the winter severity index over the last 10 years. You can see 2013, we are right at average. That red line is the average line throughout the state. And in 2014, we were at average again. Those were the 2 years we conducted the survey or the research project thus far. We have 1 year under our belt in 2013. We are conducting it this year as well again, and I'll go through all that. But yes, what happens when we do have a severe winter? How does that affect overwinter fawn survival? That's something we really want to determine through this research project. How important is this? Well, I have a hypothetical modeling example here. If I leave everything in the model constant, doe survival, buck survival, age and sex ratios, and the only thing I change is overwinter fawn survival. You can see here, if I have an overwinter fawn survival of 80%, our lambda rates are 1.12, indicating a 12% increase over the 3-year period. If I have a 50% overwinter fawn survival, our lambda rates go down to 0.96, thus a 4% decrease. So that overwinter fawn survival is such an important metric when we're looking at population growth and decline. Another concern we have here as managers, throughout the last 4 years really, our prairie white-tailed deer 5-month recruitment rates have been on the downward decline. You can see here, in 2010 we were right about 103 fawns per doe. In 2013 we were at really an all-time low at 90 fawns per doe. And this has been a steady decline ever since. You can see here we do have significant difference, indicating 2010 and 2013 our difference. The CIs do not overlap. And this is a concern we're going to keep a close eye on. That's another reason for the fawn research. Our bigger concern, however, is our mule deer populations. Our statewide 5-month recruitment for our mule deer is declining even at a steeper slope here. You can see in 2010 we were up to about 77 fawns per 100 does. In 2013 we were down to that 56 fawns per 100 does. So a pretty drastic decline there over the last 4 years. So where is this study taking place? Where are the study areas? Well, they're spread across the state. We have one here in Lake and McCook County. Clark County, we've been researching deer there for the last 5 years, and we're continuing to research deer there. We have a fawn study area on the Bad River Corridor and the Fort Pierre National Grasslands right there. We have a fawn study area along the Cheyenne River in Meade and Pennington counties. And then we have a new study area up here in Perkins County. This is a collaborative research effort with SDSU. They're working with North Dakota, actually, looking at oil and gas development and how that is impacting white-tailed deer fawn survival rates and adult survival rates. And they picked Perkins County as their control area. So it's a very unique opportunity to quantify the impacts of oil and gas development. We also collared 35 fawns in that study area in 2014, so we'll include that to the analysis here. I'll show you in a minute. The primary objective of this study is to estimate annual survival rates and overwinter fawn survival of obviously whitetail and mule deer fawns occupying agricultural and prairie landscapes throughout South Dakota. How did we get this job done? Well, first off, we had to catch the fawns, and we did this through daytime ground searches and opportunistic visual observations. We drove a lot of roads. We did a lot of glassing with binoculars. We also did a lot of hiking. In areas where there was no roads, we put on a lot of miles on the boots. And then we did some grid searches as well. This is what I consider a grid search, having 5 to 10 people walk 10 meters apart from one another and walk a field of CRP or a pasture to try to find that fawn. We also used vaginal implant transmitters to aid in the capture process. We inserted these vaginal implant transmitters in pregnant does back in February when we radio collared the individuals. And we used those in Region 3 in Perkins County. So they did assist in our fawn capturing efforts. They did help. So when we did catch a fawn, we took the sex and weight of the individual. We determined sex and quantified the weight. We did measure the hoof hair line to growth line measurement. And this is another indicator of age, how old that fawn is. And then we estimated age in other ways, looking at the umbilical cord condition, the weight of the animal, and the mobility of the animal. Typically, a fawn less than 5 days old will lay there like this one here. A lot of times when you get them 5 days or older, you have a foot race on your hands, and you have to go and catch the fawn and hold it down for the most part during the time when you're collecting all this data. We used all these indices or indexes to look at peak parturition dates to quantify that, and we also recorded habitat where the fawn was captured. Once all the collars were deployed on these fawns, mortality monitoring via ground and aerial telemetry occurred every 7 to 10 days and is still occurring at this time. Once a mortality is detected, we are trying to go out immediately to determine those factors contributing to that mortality. One thing we have to consider here, though, this is not a cause-specific mortality study, and it's because we're only monitoring every 7 to 10 days. In order to quantify cause-specific mortality, one would need to monitor these individuals daily. We just don't have the time or staff to really do that effort on such a large scale and so many study areas. I'll show you here how many fawns we've collared, and this is really the reason why. We collared 168 fawns in 2013, 83 of these were mule deer, 85 whitetails. In 2014, we upped our sampling effort, and we caught 271 fawns across the state, 89 mule deer and 182 whitetails. So we really do have significant samples here. These are great sample sizes, encompassing a large area of South Dakota to get us a better handle on this overwinter fawn survival and annual fawn survival. How much effort was involved in this exercise or this research project? Well, on average, it does take a significant amount of time to catch a fawn per individual. On average, about 15 hours, actually. You can see in some regions we had higher catch per unit efforts, in some other regions we had lower catch per unit efforts. And I attribute, in Region 3, we have probably our lowest deer densities in Region 3, and thus harder to find deer in general, and making it harder to find those fawns as well. But overall, this average line is right at that 15 hours per captured fawn. This does compare very well to other states, and they're also doing an effort similar to this, and you'll see catch per unit efforts anywhere between 12 and 17 hours per captured fawn. It does take a significant amount of effort. There's no doubt about it. Usually occurring over about a 3-week period. So during those 3 weeks, we have a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of staff helping out with this project. It's a monumental effort, really. So looking at some of the 2013 data that we have quantified here, we have 1 year under our belts, like I said, and here's the results of the first year. You can see here the vast majority of our mortality occurs in the first 20 weeks of life, and that's very typical to what the literature suggests as well. You can see here the Region 1 in the red line. This is that Meade-Pennington study area. Our overall annual survival rate was right at that 53-54%. Not too bad. Things weren't too bad. We had a very mild winter that did help. See how this line flattened out here over winter. between week 20 and week 52, we hardly lost any fawns, which was very surprising to us as managers. And we do obviously take the vast majority of our mortality events in those first 20 weeks. Region 2, we were a little lower. We were at 49% annual survival. Again, we've seen very little overwinter fawn mortality during that 20 to 52 week period. Where are we in 2014? Now this is the data up to 11 weeks. We're 11 weeks into the survival curve. Most of these fawns were collared the first week of June. We were actually below our 2013 survival rates. In 2013, we were at 69 and 70%. This year, we're down to 54% thus far. This is kind of an alarming statistic right here, and there's a lot of potential reasons why this could be, and we can't rule any of them out. I mean, it could be prey availability, predator densities, habitat changes, or lack thereof. There's a lot of things that could be driving this number down, but one thing we do know, it is down from 2013. We're going to keep a close eye on it. So how are our whitetails doing, and how did they do in 2013? Well, they didn't do too bad. In Region 4 was our highest survival with our whitetails. We've seen a survival rate of right around 49%. Again, a little different than mule deer. We see about, once these whitetail fawns get to about 13, 14 weeks instead of 20 weeks, they appear their mortality kind of drops off a little bit. We see a significant amount of mortality the first 6 to 8 weeks, and then it starts to drop off after that week 12 period. And you can see we did lose some fawns over winter. It wasn't that straight line like we've seen in Region 1 and Region 2 with the mule deer. And that's to be expected. We have more severe winters in Region 4 and Region 3. We have more snow depth. It's colder. And you can see in Region 3 as well, we continue to lose fawns over the winter time. Our overall our overwinter mortality or survival rate was right around 78%. The mule deer was right around 95%. So there was some significant differences there. We did see, however, very low annual survival rate in Region 3, only at 33%. And this is a concern. It's very hard to grow a herd with a 33% fawn survival rate. We can grow a herd with, depending on what the annual doe survival is and the other factors into the model, but we can grow a herd with a 50% survival rate. It's tough to get lamb to over 1 with 33% here. Where are we in 2014? Well, in Region 4, we're right at 71%. So we're actually above where we were last year at this 11-week period. Time will tell where these lines shake out, and it's going to be very hard to predict if we're going to be below or above these lines. It's really early in the year to really know exactly where we're going to end up at week 52. But we do know we're above, survival rates are above 2013's thus far in Region 4. In Region 3, they're actually right at where they were last year. They're right at that 62% mark. So some pretty interesting things here to consider. In Perkins County, I've been talking with a grad student there. He is actually right in between these two. He's right at about 68% thus far. So it's kind of what we expected a little bit with our whitetails. And like I said, the mule deer is below of what we kind of expected. So something we'll continue monitoring, and very good data for the models. So what is causing these mortalities? And like I said, this is not a cause-specific mortality study, so it's hard for us to really quantify this. But when we do come across a mortality, we try to, the best we can, classify it as predation, scavenge, unknown, human interactions. We'll have some get caught in sickle mowers, and we'll have some get caught in, we actually had one get caught in a foothold trap. But a lot of times you'll come across a carcass similar to this, and it's very hard to determine cause of death because it might be 3, 5, 10 days old. But overall, we do see with our mule deer, probable predation / scavenge rates are right around 64%. It's very hard to determine if the animal was killed by a predator or just scavenged by a predator. We do have some unknowns there. It's a very large unknown category because of the issues I just mentioned. With our whitetails, similar probable predation / scavenge right around 43%. Our unknown category, again, 43%. We had some abandonment. We had a couple road kills, especially in Region 3. Vehicle collisions in Region 3 seem to be somewhat of a concern. We're going to have to keep a close eye on that. We had an adult study in 2009 that 33% of the cause-specific mortality was caused by vehicle collisions, and that was a pretty astounding factor there. So with our mule deer in 2014, we've recorded 42 mortalities thus far, and very similar to the 2013 data. We're seeing high probable predation / scavenge rates. Again, it's very hard to determine cause of death when you come across a carcass like that. Unknown, 31%. We had one abandoned abandoned fawn out of the 89 we've collared, out of the 89 mule deer. 52 mortalities have been documented so far with our whitetails. 52% probable predation / scavenged, and you can see a lot of other unknowns. We have some natural mortality here. That's starvation, weather-related events. We had 3 fawns during those wet periods that we feel died of hyperthermia. We had 1 fawn we're pretty confident drowned in a pasture pond. We had some abandonment issues. We had 4 fawns abandoned out of the 182 whitetails that we collared, and we had 1 roadkill thus far, and a sycamore interaction right here. So just a plethora of different things that these fawns are against, and we're trying to really, this unknown category is large, but that is because of the monitoring every 7-10 days. So in summary, annual survival rates in 2013 ranged from 33 to 54% for both whitetail and mule deer fawns. These data ultimately assisted GFP staff in developing the 2014 deer season structure and tag recommendations. We will continue monitoring, obviously, the fawns we currently have on the air every 7 to 10 days. Adult doe and fawn radio collaring efforts will continue in 2015, and this immensely improves our model estimates and projections, and it really does help us manage the great resource of South Dakota. So with that, I'll take some questions and anything you might have to ask, and I'll try to address that.
Questions for Kevin? Go ahead.
You had a page up there that showed that the percent, if it's 50%, is the population going to remain stable?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is dependent upon other factors that go into the model. Fawn survival is just going to be one input variable. We are going to have doe survival that incorporates into the model, buck survival, and it is dependent upon that. But when you have annual fawn survival of 50% or greater, it is, with our doe survival rates that we're currently quantifying or currently collecting, we can grow a population. And we have seen our growth curves above 1.04, so, and above, I should say.
Other questions?
Does disease enter into fawns, or is that just adult?
Yes, disease can enter into fawns. I mean, it probably is going to be in this unknown category, or the natural category. We have taken some fawns to the lab. Usually by the time you get there, though, it's so hard to determine cause of death because they've been laying there 2 or 3 days. To really get at disease issues with fawns, you'd have to have the carcass within 24 hours of death, and we're just not getting that. So disease can affect fawns, though. I mean, your Clostridium